the use of these is out in front of the public data, or getting out way in front of published data. That doesn't mean that those experiences aren't valid, but it means that we have to be careful about generalizability, because clearly some individuals respond very differently than other individuals attempting the same thing. So if you have a person who's done extremely well on a ketogenic diet, and they'd say to everyone else on their team, hey, it worked for me, you do it too, it probably isn't going to be universally beneficial or effective. The other problem we have is if somebody has figured out something that works uniquely well for them, and you ask them, how come you're winning all these events, and they're professional and they're getting paid to do that, they're not going to tell you, and we can't ask them that. I mean, there is a skier named Lindsay Vonn who dominated women's downhill skiing. You know, all three, you know, downhill, giant slalom, for like, what, 7 or 8 years? In the last 4 years, she was essentially full keto. But why would she tell anybody? I mean, and for the reason she said she did it, she didn't need to lose weight. She didn't need it for endurance, because she said if my event lasted longer than 2 minutes, I'd lose, yeah. But apparently, and again, I have heard this is all secondary information, but I have heard that the reason is that her volume of training could be doubled without becoming stale and going off peak, and her training, her season would last for 8 months, from the earliest snowfall in the Alps to wherever. And she had to maintain high volume training throughout that to maintain peak. And she said, I could just out-train my competitors because my recovery time was so much better. The ultra runners that we have studied tell us that they train low. They may or may not eat some low glycemic the night before, and then they will oftentimes use strategic carbs in race. Any event lasting longer than 3 hours, that individuals will oftentimes use some form of carbs where they're providing, typically what they evolve to is about 10% of their total energy expenditure coming in as carbs during the event. And when we look at what ultra marathoners burn when we put them on and these are people who are trained to run 100-kilometer, 100-mile distances, and we put them on a treadmill at race pace for 3 hours, they end up running a marathon on a treadmill, in a basement room in the lab, staring at a blank wall. I mean, talk about masochism. What they tell us, what we measure, is that they're burning 90% fat for that whole 3 hours, and that the 10% being burned as carbs would be the amount that they have figured out just from their own instincts that they need to take, and if they're going to do an event longer than 3 hours.
Yeah, so that's pretty consistent with the athletes I train. So they might burn 1,200 calories an hour at their long distance race pace, and they might be taking, 25, 30 grams of carbohydrate an hour, 120 calories. It's about what you're thinking, right? And that would be very different than the carb-heavy athletes who might be chucking down 100 or 120 grams of carbohydrate an hour.
Elite, I look after elite AFL football teams, and I have individuals who are completely ketogenic, who are absolutely fine. I have others who struggle with, who are train low, compete high, so they'll be ketogenic during the week or low carb, and then top up on their heavy training days and so on. So very, very varied. And